Dobro jutro. Kako si? Very good. That's my only 2 words that I know. I want to talk about 15 explosive things that I collected over the last couple of years. These are agile practices that you can take home and use in your company or your team. Now, thanks to these sponsors, we are here. That's the mandatory slide I had to put in. Now, a little warning. Do try these things at home. It's very important. We spent 9 hours of our lives all together in this room for this whole conference, but you should think for yourself, what am I going to do differently tomorrow? And I give you 15 things that you should try tomorrow at home. So do try these things at home. Quick survey about you. Now, who is actually analyzing software? Analyzing software, analyzing the business, analyzing requirements. We have around 20 hands, I would say. Who is designing software? 10, a little bit less, maybe 20. Who is writing code? Yes, we have a lot of people that write code. Who is doing some testing, either manual, automating, things like that? Still around 20, 30, more, cool. Who is architecting software? 5, 6, 7, not so many, I would say around 10. Who is documenting software? Writing documentation? Yes, 10, not many people are writing documentation. Who is coaching teams, helping teams out? Oh, we have plenty of people coaching teams, 40. And who is managing something? Either scope, teams, organizational work. Yes, we have a lot of people managing stuff. Now, I love to do this survey because I saw a lot of people actually holding their hands up multiple times. That's a good thing. Because I don't want to be only a business analyst. I don't want to be only a tester. I don't want to be only a coder, as Arya just showed us. I want to do more things, and everyone is actually doing a lot of things. So think less about roles, think more about activities. About me, these are a couple of clients in Europe that I worked for. I'm very proud of this thing here. This is the Software Craftsmanship Zurich community. We have a page on Meetup. We get together once a month. If you are ever in Switzerland, say hello to these people. I'm there, and we are doing some craftsmanship stuff. Now, this is how I spent my life. Yes, I have a private life. I'm also writing code sometimes, not anymore so much, but this is how basically I spend the days. Now, I have to tell you a little story. I actually lived in Sydney, Australia for 3 years, and then I moved back to Switzerland. And in the wintertime, in November, December, what you do in Switzerland is you go skiing. And actually, I went skiing, and I was going down the slopes like James Bond. You have the picture in your head, James Bond going down the slopes and shooting in his back. That was me. But the problem is I can't ski like James Bond. So I actually had a big ski accident, and I hurt one of these 2 bones here. And I had to spend 2 months at home in my bed, so lying in my bed. That was quite horrible 6 years ago. But the good thing is I had suddenly a lot of time at my hands because I was not allowed to work. And suddenly I had all these things in my head, like these experiments, these little pet projects that I could work on. And one of these pet projects I worked on was actually this thing here called Copycat. Now, Copycat is a little idea where I thought, hey, your content is valuable, your time is precious. I want to know if someone is using my work on their website. So it's basically, if someone is copying my stuff, I want to know that. So I can load a sample text here. This comes from my blog post. If I go scroll down here, I should say who uses this text. And now Copycat will tell me, hey, on this blog, you can find exactly the same text, so someone is stealing your text. Now, who likes this idea, this business idea? Oh, cool. Very cool. I saw I saw around 30 hands. I thought to myself as well, this is a great idea. But I horribly failed because actually no one is using that thing and I'm not making any money with this at all. So the whole dream of having my own island where I could do some sunbathing or skiing, whatever, is not working out. So that's also the reason why I'm still here, sadly enough. No, I'm quite happy to be here. But that's one of the things I failed miserably, and I learned a lot of things, and I want to teach you or tell you about this failure. Now, this is the plan. These are the 15 things that we are trying to look at. Let's start with the first one. Now, what's an MVP? Who knows what an MVP is? Most of you, I would say. Now, I don't want to talk about MVPs. Every time you see a black slide, that means that's something we don't talk about. I want to talk about minimum viable experiments. So I don't want to talk about minimum viable products, because when you talk about products, you have already a product in your head. And the goal is not to build a product. The goal of an MVP is not to build a product. The goal of an MVP is to validate an assumption. So I try to talk about experiments. And this change of language helps you to change your mindset. So we are talking about experiments, we are trying to validate them, we are trying to say, okay, is this working out, yes or no? How do we know? And this is much a more powerful way of thinking instead of minimum viable products. Yes. Now, I want to do a little bit of voting. So everyone, please grab a piece of paper or grab your mobile phone or your smartphone, and in your smartphone, I need you to make 3 columns. Now here you write down the thing that I just explained you. Then on the first column, you write a number from 1 till 5 on how crazy that thing is. Now, for example, if you think that minimum viable experiment, this change of language is very crazy, then you give it a 5. Otherwise, you give it a 1. So a range from 1 to 5. Second question is, how would that work at my job? 5 is, yes, it would work at my job. 1 is, no, it doesn't work. And the last question is, what's the likelihood I'm going to use that tomorrow? 5 is, yes, I'm going to switch my language. 1 is, I don't care so much about that. So this was a little warm-up on what we are doing in the next 35 minutes. Did everyone vote? You need to write down 3 numbers. How crazy is that? Does this work at my job, and the likelihood I'm going to use this tomorrow? Ready? All right. Now, who heard the term Concierge MVP? 1. Now, 2, 3. Who read the book Lean Startup from Eric Ries? Not many people. Okay, you have something on your to-do list tomorrow. You need to buy that book or rent it from a friend and read that book, because it has a lot of good insights in product development. And it's a great book. I would highly recommend you. And in that book, he's describing this concept of Concierge MVP, which I'm not going to talk about. Who knows what a magic test is? The Wizard of Oz. Those who read the book should know what I'm talking about. Now, the magic test, I explain you quickly, is if you have something on your user interface and you click on it and it's not working, but on the background, you're actually collecting how many people would click that button. And if you achieve like 100,000 people would actually click that button, then you can think, okay, maybe it makes sense to invest the time and money to actually build that thing. This would be a magic test. Now, there's a problem. When does the MVP not work, the minimum viable product? It does not work when it is it actually used by my peers? For example, if I'm the only person that is using WhatsApp on the world, so there is no use of using WhatsApp or Viber. Viber, I heard, is more popular here. So I need a network. I need other people that they have that. And the second one is, if you're always sticking to the next launch, you're always pivoting. You're trying something and then you're pivoting again. But you need to really make a proper marketing launch. This is something I also learned in the past. So the goal is to build an audience. If you don't have an audience, it's very hard to launch a product. So I want to talk about minimum viable audience. So that would be the next crazy thing. Now, what's a minimum viable audience? This is the idea, instead of trying to launch the next product, to try to find your audience before you're actually launching a product. So what's the problems that your users have? What problems are they facing in their daily work and things like that? And that's important because this famous guy, who knows who this is? I don't know him either, because I just Googled Swiss scientist old, and then this picture came up. So that's actually, I don't know who this is, but it looks, a quote looks much more professional if we have a picture like this. And he said, people only truly tell you what they want to buy by buying it. So you can do surveys, you can hallway usability tests, whatever, and they will say, I like your product, I would buy it, yes, I would buy it, but that's not the real thing. You really need to give it to them, and if they give you the money, then you know, okay, it's actually a good idea. Now, I actually did this as well. Oh, sorry, you want to take a picture? You owe me 10 seconds. I actually did this as well for my little website, Copycat. And I said, okay, I want to have, by the end of March 2012, I want to have at least 100 subscribers of my newsletter. Now, that was 1 month of experimentation I did. And then I realized by the 3rd of April, I had actually only 3. So that was my failure. And interesting enough here is the 3 was the first time I actually needed to test, is this newsletter subscription actually working? So that was my email address, the first one. The second one was mine as well, because I changed something in the code and I needed to test, is it still working? And the third guy was actually a friend of mine, and I spent the whole dinner with him talking about that thing until he said, okay, I'm signing up. So it should actually say 0, but it actually didn't succeed. Now, how do we get this minimum viable audience? Here are a couple of things what you could try. Free content, great content attracts people, that's one thing. Crowdfunding or Kickstarter. Now, this is quite popular these days. You put something on a Kickstarter, and someone in China copies your idea and steals it. That would be another thing that shouldn't happen. And another interesting approach I like is invite only. Like Gmail in the beginning, they had invite only, and that attracted a lot of people because suddenly you're part of a group and not everyone could join in. Now, this is an interesting psychological thing where, how do I get part of this group? So this is a very powerful mechanism on how to attract people. Now, who thinks this is a crazy idea to think about? Minimum viable audience. Can you do a quick voting on that thing? So tell me how crazy it is. Give me a number from 1 to 5. Would that work at my job? Should I focus more on the minimum viable audience? And the third one is, how likely am I going to use that tomorrow? Everyone has 3 numbers? Cool. I'll give you a couple of more ideas. Now, get inspired by these guys. These are a couple of URLs where you can go to and you get inspired on business ideas that are around. Now, these two are also interesting because autopsy.io is a website where you can actually learn from startups that failed. Who knows about autopsy.io before? 1. Okay. Now, if you go to autopsy.io, you can see, there was an Echelon exchange that failed in February, and there is a blog post where they're actually describing that, and the reason for failure is lack of passion. Oh, that sounds like a team building issue. No SWOT analysis, regulatory concerns, already complex, okay. But if you read through that list, there is a lot to learn here. If you are in product development and you are close to one of those startups, I would highly recommend to go there and learn from these guys. And another tip I want to give you is Amazon 2-star reviews. Now, if you go to Amazon.com and you Google for your favorite book, I should have internet. Yes? Amazon is down. Is there Amazon BA? Ah. Dum, 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 dum. What should we do while Amazon is preparing their thing? Demo effect, no internet. What I wanted to show you is actually if you go to Amazon and you you search for a book on Amazon, for example, about Scrum or Agile or DevOps or continuous whatever or leadership, and you search for a book that has a lot of ratings. And then you go to the ratings with only 2 stars, because the 2-star reviews, they usually give a comment like, oh, I enjoyed this book, but the title didn't tell me what it actually is inside. So you learn, oh, I should have a proper title that describes the content better. Or they say, the book is great, but it's missing a key piece of information about the theory behind Scrum, whatever. And then you know, okay, I should actually write a book about the theory about Scrum. So if you're thinking about writing a book, as Ari actually does, you should get inspired by Amazon 2-star reviews, and Amazon is here. Let's use Agile. Now I show you what I explained you in the last 10 seconds. Oh, Amazon is way too slow today. Nah, let's skip that. But you get the idea. We learn from the feedback from the people. All right, who is using user stories in their job? I want to see more hands because I know that everyone is using user stories. Yes. As a user, I want a button so that I can log in. What the fuck? No user wants a button. And no user wants to log in. That's painful. Don't do that. So another example is, as a mobile user, we were talking about Nokia just before, I want a longer antenna so that I can have better reception. What? And I see these stories all the time. This is completely going in the wrong direction. So I have a tip from Popcorn Flow. This is a cool guy. He took this idea of job stories. Now, what is that? Instead of using this kind of format, as a user, I want so that, because we have a lot of early assumptions in here. We don't know if a longer antenna is actually a good idea. So he's actually using this format called job stories. It's pretty simple. When I want. And be careful, don't say, when I'm riding a train, I want a longer antenna, because that's not what you want. Focus really here on the user need. So when I'm calling a friend on the train, maybe, I want to minimize the likelihood that the conversation drops. And now you realize, calling a friend on the train in Switzerland somewhere, so maybe there's not a good enough reception, maybe we could do something in the train. And now you are in the solution space and you have a lot of interesting ideas that you can come up with. Quick voting on job stories. And I'm checking the time in the meantime, 10:55, cool. So give me 3 numbers. Are you going to use job stories tomorrow? How crazy is that? And would that work at my job instead of using the user story format? As a user, I want so that. As a developer, I want a development environment so that I can develop my code. Don't do that, please. All right, let's move on. Elevator pitches. There are a lot of templates these days regarding elevator pitch, and one very popular one is our product is Uber for blah, which is quite nice. But I would actually recommend you to use this idea of working backwards. So you start with the end in mind. And how you do that is you start with the press release. So you're actually preparing the press release before you're launching the product or you're launching your software. Now, make a little product box, make a little one-pager, hang it somewhere in your company, and let people get feedback. Put an email address there and say, hey, do you like this idea? Send me an email, send me a tweet, send me a Slack message or whatever, and then you get feedback, hey, this is actually a great idea. We should try to work on this. So this is working backwards and comes from Amazon. Now there's a template on how you can do that. Who likes this idea? Instead of using elevator pitches, working backwards. I give you 10 seconds to do the voting. How crazy is that? Would that work at my job? And what's the likelihood I'm going to use that tomorrow? From 1 to 5. Everyone has 3 numbers? Cool. Now, who has a product backlog filled with stories, features, epics, bugs, things like that? Everyone? Yes, I know that you do. Okay. Who has a product backlog filled with hypotheses? Some of you. Cool. 6, I would say. 6. Now, the first step is you replace requirements with hypotheses. Are we building the right product? Can we actually deal with this new database technology? Can we deal with this new messaging queue system? Things like that. And the template here comes actually from ThoughtWorks, and it's like that. We believe that this capability or feature will result in this outcome. And we will know how, when we have succeeded, when we see the measurable signal. Now, we're actually thinking about, okay, how do we measure that at the end? This is a very important aspect. Hypothesis-driven development. I give you another 10 seconds to vote on that. Hypothesis-driven development. How crazy is that? Would that work at my job? Why not? And what's the likelihood I'm going to use that tomorrow? Interesting here is the more experiments or hypotheses you validate depends on how often deploy to production. So there is a little statistics. This is actually more than 1 year old, and this comes from ThoughtWorks as well. It's funny that I don't have a date here. But basically what it says is that 75% of the industry deploy less frequent than 1 time per week. So that means if you want to run a lot of experiments, you're not able to run more than 1 experiment per week because you're not deploying so often into production. So you probably need to work on that as well. And the deployment to production allows you to run more experiments. Now let's talk about metrics-driven development. Who heard that before? Metrics-driven development. There are a lot of driven developments these days, and one of them is metrics. Now metrics is basically the idea you have a dashboard somewhere with a lot of graphs and numbers and things like that. For example, here I'm looking at AWS CPU, I'm looking at the garbage collector, buffers and other things. And I'm looking at these numbers over time, and then I think to myself, okay, how can I bring this number up or down? And the only thing I'm doing in the team is I change something in the configuration or in the code or in the architectural setup to bring that number up or down. And that's the only thing we focus. We focus on these metrics only. That's an interesting idea, but I think it should be also that you're not just focusing on the technical stuff, but you should also focus on the business relevant stuff. Now, how many items do people have in their shopping cart at the moment? What's the trend? Is it going up? Is it going down? What's the number in the evening? What's the number in Monday morning? Things like that. How many purchases per minute do we have? What's the average basket size in amount of dollars? Things like that. Measure that and then try to think, how can we bring this number up or down? What can we do as a team to change that? And this would be just a mock-up of a monitoring dashboard. Now this is called metrics-driven development, and the key fundamental idea is that experiments plus data is much more important than arguments or an opinion from a hippo or from an important person. Now there is an interesting blog post from Google called 50 Shades of Blue. Who heard of that blog post? Some of you, cool. Basically one guy, the chief usability guy, said, okay, I found the perfect color for links that we should have on our Google website. And he said, it needs to be this certain color of blue. And all the other software engineers said, nah, we are not sure about that. So what Google did, they ran experiments with lots of different colors of blue, and then they found the perfect color of blue. And so Google has this mindset of running experiments, and data is much more important than one chief usability designer. And it has an interesting implication on the team behavior. Voting. Metrics-driven development. How crazy is that? Would that work at my job? What's the likelihood I'm going to use? Now, obviously, if you want to use that practice, you need to have some metrics in place. So that will be the first step to work on. All right. I don't want to talk about more, or adding more stuff. I want to show you another interesting mindset, and this is called the via negativa. So the via negativa is an approach where you actually try to remove something from your life in order to improve your life. So adding to your life by removing something. Instead of saying, I'm doing more healthy stuff next year, or I'm eating more fruit, or adding more stuff, I'm trying to, on purpose, remove something. And I have a little tip here. So your next New Year's resolution, so that's at the end of the year where you think about, okay, what am I going to do differently next year? You on purpose think about, I'm stop doing something. And here's a little tip for free. If you send an email to that email address, 30th December of followupden.io, you will receive a reply on that date. So you will get an email in your inbox on that date by saying, okay, what do you stop doing next year? And this is a little life hack that can help you improve to not to remember a lot of things. You send an email to that email address, and then you will get a reply with that answer. So stop something next year. How crazy is this? Via negativa. Crazy, works on my job, likelihood I'm going to use that. 3 numbers. Okay, who knows the 6 thinking hats? Not so many. 5, I would say. So this is a brainstorming technique I quite like. I like this method more. This is called God mode design thinking. Now that's a simple question. What would God do? Now, no constraints, no problems, no whatever. What would God do? So this is how close can we come to the ideal design, basically, the question. And there's an interesting story about this algorithm here. So we have now an unsorted array of numbers. Now, how would God sort this array? God would probably take the first number and put it at the right place. God would then take the second number, put it at the right place, and so on. Now, if you look at that, this is actually happening. So take the 5, put it at the right place. Now suddenly you have 2 arrays. Now you take the first number, you put it at the right place, and then you have another 2 arrays, or 1 in that case. And this is quicksort. Who knows quicksort? Most of you. Okay, cool. I'm not sure if quicksort was invented this way, but basically this is the idea. Let's take the first number and put it in the right place. So a great brain storming technique. Quick voting. What would God do? You can ask that tomorrow when you're at home with your kids. What would God do? Interesting technique. Pair programming. Who does pair programming? Some of you, 20 I would say. Now who knows about mob programming? 5, 6, 7, cool. More and more people learn about that technique. So mob programming is basically the idea that the whole team works on the same thing at the same time, on the same machine, on the same computer, in the same location. And this works quite well because the knowledge sharing part is very powerful, and you have all the brains working together on one keyboard. This is how it looks like. This is one thing that comes from our meetup, and you can see that it comes from our meetup because there is beer involved. I would not recommend that to do that in the office, but it's very great to actually do this as a team. Who is going to do mob programming tomorrow? How crazy is that?
We're doing it, but we're not aware.
Oh, cool. So I heard just from Nermina that they are actually doing it, but they were not sure that it is called mob programming. That's very cool. Cool. Long sprints. I work with a lot of Scrum teams, and yeah, it's a challenge. Now, who has a 1 month sprint in here? No one. Cool. One. Who works on hardware, not just software? One. Just one, okay. Who has 2-week sprints? That's the most popular thing, I would say, yeah? And who has 1-week sprints? Oh, cool. I love that. Okay, cool. Now, here the idea is cut the sprint in half. Get the team together and ask them, okay, we cut the sprint in half. We are going from 1-week sprints into 2-day sprints. And usually you get a lot of resistance. People say, that doesn't work because our build server is too slow. Or we need to document something every time and that takes at least 48 hours. Or they say, our testing team is so slow and things like that. Now that's cool because now you have a problem to fix. Now fix that problem. And that helps you with this mindset. Cut the sprint in half and then you find new problems that you can tackle. Quick voting. Who is going to cut their sprints in half tomorrow? Show me some hands. Who is going to cut their sprint in half tomorrow? No one. Tomorrow is Sunday. Good, right. Monday. But you get the idea. Cool. Self-organizing teams. Everyone talks about self-organizing. Where is the border? What do we self-organize? Are we allowed to organize our salary? Things like that. Yeah, maybe not. We should. Huh? You do? Oh, you do? Oh, I need to join your company. Now, I have a thing called code protocols. This comes from the McCarthy family. And I love that because it's about team commitments and team behavior. It's a PDF with about 5 or 7 pages, and it has a couple of interesting approaches on how you deal with certain situations. One thing is the perfection game. I'm just looking at the time. I'm doing all right, I think. And the perfection game is basically a simple thing where after you have done something, you ask the other person, how would you rate me from 1 till 10? And then if the person say, okay, a 1 would be it was a complete disaster, and a 10 was it was perfect. And usually you get a 7 or an 8, and then the important thing is actually the follow-up question. Now, what would it make it a 9, or what would it make it a 10? Because then you get a very good feedback on how you could improve the situation that you just were in. So this is one of the things that comes out of the core protocols, the perfection game. And there are a lot of more things in there that are very cool, very, very good to check out. Now, who is going to check out the core protocols tomorrow? I mean, on Monday. 1 at least, 2, 5 minutes, cool. I'll give you a little bit of voting. Now, definition of done. Who has a definition of done? Good. Otherwise, I have a problem. If we don't have a definition of done, this whole Agile thing is not working. Now, who has a definition of awesome? This is a little retrospective technique that comes out of the book from Gfader, and it's basically just this question, what would awesome look like in our team, and what's the first step to get there? There are a couple of visualizations because we love to visualize work and get together and talk about this thing. And this is the book that this technique is described in, Gfader. Definition of awesome. Who is creating a definition of awesome tomorrow? Cool, voting. Now, learn from failure. That's a very interesting concept, I call it. But I would actually think about we celebrate failure. Now, who is celebrating failure in their company? Why not? Some of you, yeah, 4 or 5, yeah, cool. So I try to, there is this idea called failure bow, and the idea is how fascinating You made a mistake. What can we learn from this? This is a very important concept because from the failures you can learn a lot. Root cause analysis, these are interesting things. Now I want you to check out this video from Benjamin Zander where he does this with his student, and it's interesting on how he learns a lot of new things just by celebrating the failure. Okay, was a good mistake. What can we learn from this? Who is going to celebrate failure tomorrow? Monday. 1, 2, 3, 4, cool. Don't fail too much because otherwise... Retrospectives. This is a popular technique in our Agile world, which I like. I would actually recommend you to do also personal retrospectives. So the idea is not in your team, but on your personal level, on your way home from work or in the train, you sit back and you say, okay, what was good today and what was bad today? Which conversation did I like? Which conversation I didn't like? Which human interaction I had a very good feeling or not? This is called personal retrospectives. Who is going to do that tomorrow? Some of you, cool. I think I need to rush a little because otherwise I'm not able to show you all them. Now, who is playing theater? No one. Who is playing theater? No one. Wow. What is theater? Theater is when people go on stage and they make a little performance. Yeah. Who is playing theater? No one. Wow. Still, okay. Now, I want to tilt up the notch a little, and this is improv theater. Improv theater is a concept, you have no idea what's happening on stage. And who is doing improvisational theater? Probably no one, yeah. What I learned a lot about doing improvisational theater, because I do that, is it's not about being funny. It's not that someone is a natural performer. You can learn that stuff, and you learn a lot of stuff by doing that. And it's not hard, actually, if you have a safe environment. Improvisation is everywhere. Turn off your conscious brain. This is an interesting thing that comes out of theater. It's the improvisational theater. It's this yes and. Instead of saying, oh yeah, I liked what I heard, but we try to say yes and. We're building up something on top of it. So who is going to start with theater next week? Who is going to start with improvisational theater next week? That gets you out of the comfort zone, I can tell you, but it's a great way to learn. Cool. I'm on time. Wow, that's beautiful. I should have told you a little bit more about improvisational theater, but it doesn't matter. So these were the 15 things I just showed you, and I'm very much looking forward, what are you going to do differently tomorrow or on Monday? So I'm happy if you send me an email, or if you send me a tweet, or if you send me a Slack message, or if you approach me outside and tell me, hey Peter, I'm really looking forward to talk with my team about cutting the sprint into half, because then we really go into the root cause of our problems. Or you tell me, the God mode design thinking was very interesting. I'm going to start it tomorrow. Thank you very much. What do you start tomorrow?